The twin suns burned high in the sky, and the land below was nothing but endless desert. The ground was dry, cracked like broken glass, and every step left a trace of dust. The wind carried hot sand that stung the skin, whispering like angry voices. This place was known as the Desert of Silence, a land where even hope seemed afraid to live. Near the center of the village, the people gathered around an ancient stone well. It was the only source of water for miles, and every villager came here once a day to drink. Men, women, and children stood in long lines with their clay cups and jars waiting. They moved slowly, careful not to waste a single drop, because water was life, and life was scarce. Among them, at the very edge of the crowd, stood a young girl, her skin pale and dry. Her lips were cracked, her small hands trembling as she tried to hold a small cup. Her clothes were torn, her eyes hollow. But what was worse than her hunger was the fear in her face. She looked at the well with desperate hope, but when she stepped closer, the crowd moved back. "Stay away," one woman hissed, clutching her child close. "You do not belong here," an old man growled, his eyes sharp with anger. "Impure," whispered another, and soon the word spread like fire in dry grass. "Impure, impure, she is impure." The girl froze, her thin shoulders shaking. She tried to speak, but her throat was too dry, her voice too weak. All she wanted was a sip of water, one taste to keep her alive. But no one offered kindness. No one stepped forward. Instead, they pushed her back until she stood alone at the edge, her cup empty. The villagers lined up again, lowering their buckets into the well, pulling up water. Children laughed softly when they drank. Women whispered as they filled their jars. But every time the girl moved closer, she was shoved aside. No one cared that she was fading. No one cared that she could barely stand. Finally, the elder of the village appeared, an old man with a long robe and a heavy staff. He looked at the girl with cold eyes and raised his hand. "You know the law," he said, his voice echoing. "The impure must never drink from the well." The crowd nodded, their faces grim. The girl's lips trembled, but she dared to whisper, "Please, just one sip." The elder struck his staff against the stone, the sound loud and cruel. "Silence," he commanded. "If you drink, the curse will spread, and all of us will suffer." The people turned their backs on her, choosing fear over mercy. The girl's knees buckled, and she fell to the ground, the hot sand burning her skin. Her cup rolled away, lost in the dust. Her body shook. Her breath came shallow, her eyes half closed. The desert sun glared down like a cruel judge, and the world blurred. For a moment, it seemed this was the end. The crowd ignored her, the elder walked away, and no one cared if she lived or died. But then a shadow fell across her face, blocking the sun's heavy boots crunched in the sand, and a figure stopped beside her. It was a man, tall and strong, but not like the others. His skin was different, his clothes strange, and at his side hung a metal flask. The villagers gasped, staring at him as though he was a ghost. A whisper ran through the crowd. "Human, it is a human." The man knelt down, his shadow covering the girl. Her eyes opened slightly, just enough to see his face. There was no fear in his eyes, no hatred, only concern. He touched the flask at his side and opened it. The smell of fresh water filled the air, a smell sweeter than gold. The villagers shouted at once, their voices sharp with panic. "Stop, stranger, do not touch her. She is impure. She will curse you too. Leave her, let her die." But the man did not listen. He looked at the girl, saw the pain in her eyes, and lifted the flask. Slowly, carefully, he tilted it, letting a thin stream of water touch her lips. The girl trembled, her dry throat swallowing eagerly. Her eyes filled with tears as life returned to her, drop by drop. The crowd cried out in horror. The elder raised his staff again, shouting, "You fool, you doom yourself." But the man only looked at them with calm defiance. "If mercy is doom," he said, his voice steady, "then let me be doomed." The girl coughed, then gasped, her weak body gaining strength from the water. Her hands clutched at the flask as if it were the most precious treasure, and in that moment something strange happened. The skin on her arm began to glow faintly, symbols shining like stars beneath the surface. The crowd screamed, stepping back in fear. "The mark!" someone cried. "The impurity!" another shouted. But the human leaned closer, eyes narrowing at the glowing lines, his lips curled in a half-smile, and he whispered, "No, this is not impurity. This is something else." The desert was silent again, but no longer empty. A storm was coming, not of sand, but of secrets, and it had begun with one sip of water. The desert air grew heavy, silence pressing against the ears of all who stood around the well. The girl still lay weak on the sand, her lips wet from the water the human had given. Her hands clutched the flask tightly, as if it was not only water but her very soul. The human crouched beside her, his tall frame shielding her from the merciless suns. The villagers stood frozen, their jars and cups forgotten. Fear and anger filled their eyes. Whispers rose like buzzing insects. "He touched her," someone cried. "He has broken the law. The curse will fall on him, on all of us," another shouted. But none of them dared to move closer, for the glowing marks on the girl's skin burned in their memories. The elder struck his staff against the ground again, the sound echoing like thunder. "You dare defy our sacred command, human." His voice was sharp, shaking with both fury and fear. The human looked up, his eyes calm, his face unreadable. "I see no curse," he answered. "I see only cruelty." The villagers gasped at his words, their fear twisting quickly into hatred. The girl coughed weakly, her voice soft but trembling with hope. "Please, don't take it away," she whispered, clinging to the flask. The human placed a steady hand on hers, reassuring her. "No one will take this from you," he said gently. "Not while I stand here." The elder raised his staff higher, his voice rising with anger. "You fool, you do not know this place, you do not know what she is. She is impure, a danger, a bringer of ruin. If you protect her, you too are cursed." But the human did not step back. He rose to his full height, his shadow stretching long across the sand. He held out the flask for all to see, its metal shining under the twin suns. "This is water," he said firmly. "Water is life. Denying it is the true curse." The crowd roared in outrage. Mothers pulled their children away. Men clenched their fists. A group of younger warriors stepped forward, carrying long spears tipped with bone and stone. Their leader pointed at the human and shouted, "Give the flask. To us, stranger. Leave her to her fate, or we will take it by force." The human's eyes narrowed, his hand never leaving the flask. He stood firm, every muscle tense not in fear, but in quiet defiance. "I crossed your desert to find truth," he said slowly, "and now I have found it. You live by fear, but I will not." The girl tried to rise, her weak legs trembling. She leaned against the human's arm, whispering, Why do you help me?" He looked down at her, his voice softer. "Because you remind me of home," he said, though he did not explain further. His eyes carried memories she could not see, of another world far away, a place where kindness was taught even in hunger. The warriors began to circle, the air tense with violence. The villagers chanted the word again, "Impure, impure, impure." The girl closed her eyes in pain, each word cutting her deeper than a blade. But the human raised his hand, silencing them. "You call her impure, but I see strength," he declared. "She survives the desert even when you leave her to die. She carries marks you fear, but fear is not truth." The crowd faltered, uncertain, their voices breaking into uneasy murmurs. The elder snarled, his staff glowing faintly with strange energy. "She carries the mark of the stars, a sign of exile, a sign of danger," he spat. "Those who carry the mark will bring storms, death, and destruction." The human tilted his head, his eyes fixed on the glowing patterns on the girl's skin. To him, they looked not like doom, but like constellations, maps across the night sky. He whispered almost to himself, "These are not curses. These are directions." The villagers heard nothing but blasphemy in his words. "Seize him," the elder commanded. "Take the flask, and let the desert judge him." The warriors stepped forward, spears raised, But the human did not move. Back instead, he bent down, lifted the girl gently into his arms. She was light as air, her body fragile, but her eyes glowed faintly with strange light. The warriors hesitated, unsure, their spears trembling. The human's gaze swept over them, sharp as steel. "If you strike us," he said coldly, "then you strike against mercy itself." For a long moment, no one moved. The desert itself seemed to hold its breath. Finally, the elder lowered his staff, his eyes filled with rage. "You cannot save her," he hissed. "The desert will swallow you both. You may defy us, human, but you cannot defy the land." The villagers began to chant again, slower now, darker, their voices like a curse carried on the wind. The human turned away, carrying the girl. Toward the horizon the suns blazed above, the sand stretched endless before him. Yet he did not falter, his steps steady, his heart resolved. The flask at his side swung with each step, a promise of life in a land of death. Behind them, the villagers watched in silence, torn between fear and doubt. Some whispered that the human was doomed. Others wondered if perhaps he had seen something they did not. The elder gripped his staff tightly, his eyes burning with hatred. "This is not the end," he muttered. "The desert will decide their fate." The girl, weak but awake, looked up at the human carrying her. Her voice was soft, trembling, but filled with wonder. No one has ever given me water before," she whispered. The human glanced down, his lips curving into a faint smile. "Then remember this moment," he said gently, "because it is only the beginning." The desert stretched on, endless and merciless, but in that endless silence a new story had begun. A story of defiance, of kindness against cruelty, of hope against despair. And with each step, the human carried not just the girl, but a spark that could one day set the whole desert. Flame, the desert stretched endless in every direction, twin suns sinking lower as the long day turned to evening. The human walked steadily across the burning land, carrying the weak girl in his arms. Each step crunched on sand and stone, but his grip was firm. His eyes locked on the horizon. The girl rested against him, her breathing shallow but steadier than before thanks to the water. As the shadows grew longer, the heat began to fade, but a strange glow flickered against the human's chest. He looked down and saw the girl's skin, glowing again, faint lines running along her arms and neck. The glowing marks shifted like rivers of light, flowing slowly beneath her skin. They were not random shapes, but patterns that seemed deliberate. The human narrowed his eyes, whispering softly, "Star maps." The girl stirred at his voice, her cracked lips trembling. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly with the same light. "You see them too," she whispered weakly. "The marks, they follow me everywhere." Her voice was filled with both sadness and fear. "They say I am cursed because of them. They call me impure." The human shook his head, his voice steady. "They are not a curse, child. They are a guide." The girl blinked, confused. "A guide? To what?" The human's gaze lifted to the night sky above, where stars slowly appeared. The glowing marks on her skin mirrored the constellations above them, each line connecting to another. It was as if her body carried a living map of the heavens. "To somewhere your people fear," the human answered, "but somewhere important." A cold wind swept across the desert, carrying the distant howl of unseen creatures. The girl shivered, her voice trembling. "If it is important, why did they cast me out?" The human frowned, his jaw tightening. "Because people fear what they do not understand," he said. "Fear makes them cruel." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she turned her face away. She had known. Only rejection, only whispers of impurity, only thirst. The human stopped at a tall stone jutting out of the sand. Setting her down gently to rest, he sat beside her, taking out his flask again. "Drink slowly," he told her, and she obeyed, every drop precious. When she finished, she held the flask close to her chest, as though it were more valuable than life itself. The desert night grew darker, the stars brighter, The glowing lines on her skin pulsed in rhythm with the constellations above. The human leaned closer, tracing the air above one mark with his finger. This one. Orion's belt, he murmured. And this, the great spiral. The girl watched him with wide eyes. You know them. He nodded slowly. Yes, they are stars my people have mapped for centuries, she gasped softly. Then these marks. They are not random. No, he said, firmly. They are a map, a path, perhaps a message. The girl's voice trembled. But why on me? The human studied her face, seeing not impurity but something rare, something destined. Because you were chosen, he whispered, and they were blind to it. Before she could reply, a sharp sound cut the air. The girl stiffened, fear in her eyes. They are coming, she whispered. From the distance, dark shapes moved across. The sand, torches burning in their hands. The villagers had followed, led by the elder, his staff glowing with strange energy. Their chants carried through the night. Impure, impure, impure. The girl trembled, pressing closer to the human. They will kill us, she said, her voice breaking. The human rose slowly, standing tall in the starlight. Not if I can help it, he said calmly, his hand resting on the flask at his side. The girl's marks glowed brighter as the villagers drew nearer. Her skin was like a mirror of the sky, a living constellation burning against the night. The elder pointed his staff at her, his voice thundering. Do you see, stranger? Do you see her curse? She carries the mark of exile, the mark of the stars. She is not one of us. She belongs to the void, and the void will claim her. The villagers cheered in agreement, raising their weapons high. But the human shook his head, his voice deep and unshaken. You are wrong, he declared. She does not belong to the void. She belongs to the future. The crowd roared with anger, but their steps faltered. For the first time, doubt stirred among them. The girl looked up at the human, her tears shining in the glow of her marks. No one has ever spoken for me, she whispered. No one but you. The human knelt, his gaze steady. Then remember this, he said gently. You are not impure. You are a star waiting to rise. The elder slammed his staff against the ground, sparks of light flashing. You defy us, human, but the desert itself will rise against you. And as if the desert obeyed his words, the wind began to howl louder. Sand whipped into the air, spinning into a storm that swallowed the stars. The girl cried out, clutching the human's arm. The storm was alive, moving with rage, lightning flashing across the sky. The human pulled, her close shielding her with his body. Hold on, he said. This storm will not take us. Through the blinding sand, the glowing marks on her skin burned brighter, and in the chaos, the human realized something. The storm was not random. It was following the pattern of her marks. The desert itself was answering to her. She was not cursed, she was connected to something far greater than the people who called her impure. The storm raged, the villagers scattered in terror. The elder's chants vanished in the roar of the wind, but in the center of the chaos stood the human and the girl. And as the lightning flashed above, their shadows stretched across the sand, two figures against an entire desert, two sparks against the silence of eternity. And the human knew. This was only the beginning. The marks on her skin were not the sign of impurity. They were the mark of destiny, the mark of the stars. The storm finally began to fade, leaving behind silence heavier than stone. Sand lay scattered in great waves across the desert, covering footprints, covering paths, hiding the direction of both hunter and prey. The villagers were gone, fleeing in fear, but their chants of impure still echoed in the girl's ears. She clung tightly to the human's arm, trembling, her glowing marks dimming slowly as the night grew still. The human set her down on a patch of high ground, breathing deeply, his eyes scanning the horizon. The stars above returned, sharp and endless, lighting the desert like a sea of silver. The girl's face was pale, her lips still cracked, but her eyes were wide with questions she had never dared to speak. At last, she whispered, Why? Why do the storms follow me? The human turned to her, his face calm, his voice steady. They don't follow you to destroy you, he said. They answer to you. Her eyes filled with confusion. Answer to me. He nodded. The desert is not your enemy. It is your mirror. She shook her head, frightened. But they said I bring ruin. They said I am cursed. The human's voice grew firmer. No, child, you are not cursed. You are connected. The girl lowered her gaze, tears glistening. I never knew my parents, she whispered. The elders told me they left me because of my impurity. Her words cracked like dry branches in the wind. They said I was born with the mark of exile, that the stars rejected me, that even the well rejected me. Her hands trembled as she traced the glowing lines on her skin. I wanted to believe them, because then at least the hatred made sense. The human placed his hand gently on her shoulder, his voice soft but certain. They lied, he said. They feared what they could not control. Her eyes rose to his, searching for truth. Then who am I? She whispered. Why do I carry these marks? The human looked at the sky, the stars blazing above. I have traveled many worlds, he said. I have seen ruins, maps, symbols, all pointing to something greater than us. And your marks, he paused, his eyes narrowing. I have seen them carved into stone on a dead world far from here. The girl gasped, her heart racing. You mean, others have seen them too? Yes, he said. Not as a curse, but as a message, as a legacy. The desert wind calmed, carrying only the faint rattle of distant sand. The girl's breath quickened, her mind caught between fear and hope. So I am not impure, she said slowly, almost afraid to believe. The human shook his head firmly. You are not impure. You are chosen. Her tears fell freely now, washing lines of dust from her cheeks. For so long she had been told she was nothing, that she was dangerous, unwanted. And now this stranger, this human, spoke as if she mattered more than the stars themselves. But even as hope grew, a shadow of doubt lingered. If this is true, she whispered, why did my people fear me? Why did they call me cursed? The human's voice grew heavier, a tone of warning in it. Because there is a truth they hide, a truth buried in their past. The elders know it, but they keep it from you, from everyone. The girl leaned closer, desperate. What truth? The human looked out across the desert, his eyes hard. That your people were not always from this world. Her breath caught in her chest, her hands clutching the flask tightly. Not from this world, she repeated, her voice breaking. The human nodded slowly. Long ago they came from the stars, wanderers, travelers, maybe exiles themselves. And you, your marks are proof of that history, proof they tried to erase. The girl's heart pounded, the night spinning around her. They denied me water because I carried their own forgotten blood, she whispered in disbelief. The human's jaw tightened. They denied you because your existence threatens their power. Their rule depends on fear, and you are the truth they fear most. For a long moment the girl sat in silence, staring at the sand. The stars above seemed brighter now, almost watching her. At last she spoke, her voice small but steady. Then I must find the truth myself. The human's lips curved in a faint smile. Yes, he said, and I will help you. But the peace of the night did not last. From far away, faint lights flickered in the desert. Torches moving like fireflies in the darkness. The villagers had not abandoned their hunt, they were regrouping, spreading wider, searching. The girl saw them and fear rushed back into her chest. They will never stop, she whispered. They will chase us until we die. The human stood, his eyes sharp, his hand on the flask. Then we go where they cannot follow, he said. We go where your marks lead. The girl's eyes widened. To the forbidden lands. He nodded. Yes, to the ruins your elders fear, to the place where the truth sleeps. The girl's marks glowed brighter, pulsing as if answering his words. The stars above shifted, aligning in strange patterns she had never noticed before. Her skin burned with light, pointing toward the west, where mountains rose like jagged teeth on the horizon. The human saw it too and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "The marks are guiding you," he said. "Trust them." Behind them the chants grew louder. "Impure, impure," echoing like drums of war. Ahead of them, the desert stretched toward the unknown, filled with shadows and secrets. The girl took a shaky breath, her voice trembling but filled with new strength. "Then let us go," she whispered. "Let us find the forbidden truth." The human nodded, and together they stepped into the darkness. The villagers' voices faded behind them. The stars glowed above them, and the desert seemed to hold its breath. The girl's marks pulsed with each step, lighting the way forward. The truth of her people, the truth of her exile, the truth of her destiny waited in the shadows. And though fear followed them, hope had begun to walk beside them. For the first time in her life, she no longer felt impure. For the first time, she felt chosen. The forbidden truth was calling, and she would answer. The desert night was heavy with silence, broken only by the crunch of the human's boots and the faint rustle of sand under the girl's steps. The stars burned above, sharp and endless, guiding them westward toward the dark outline of jagged mountains. The girl's glowing marks pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat that matched the rhythm of their journey. But behind them, faint shouts carried on the wind, and the glow of torches flickered like fireflies in the darkness. The villagers had not given up. The elder's voice echoed across the dunes, harsh and commanding. "Find them. Bring back the impure child and bring me the human's head." The crowd roared in answer. Their fear turned into blind fury, their footsteps shaking the desert. The girl's hands trembled, clutching the flask tightly to her chest. "They will never stop," she whispered. "They will hunt us until the desert takes us." The human glanced back, his face calm, though his eyes narrowed at the sight of the torches drawing closer. "They will stop," he said firmly, "because we will not let them catch us." The desert was vast, but the villagers knew its paths better than anyone. The human understood this, and he moved quickly, guiding the girl up a rocky ridge where the sand gave way to stone. The climb was hard, her weak legs shaking, but he pulled her upward with steady strength. Below them, the lights of the hunters spread across the dunes, their chants echoing. "Impure, impure, impure." When they reached the top of the ridge, the wind grew stronger, howling like a living thing. The girl's marks flared suddenly, glowing brighter against the darkness. The human paused, watching in awe as the light from her skin stretched outward like faint beams. It was not random. It pointed toward a narrow path between the mountains hidden in shadow. "The marks are guiding us," he said, his voice low. "We must follow." The girl looked at the path with wide eyes. "That is the forbidden land," she whispered. "The elders say no one who enters returns." The human placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his voice calm. "Then that is where the truth sleeps," he said, "and we are done living by their lies." But before they could descend, a sharp cry rose from below. The villagers had spotted their trail on the ridge, and the warriors surged forward with spears and torches. The elder lifted his staff, lightning sparking faintly from its tip. "The storm obeys me," he shouted, "and it will bury you both." The winds roared louder as if answering his call, sand twisting into violent spirals. The girl stumbled, clinging to the human's arm, fear in her voice. "The storm is coming again," she cried. The human tightened his grip, shielding her with his body. "Then we run with it," he said, "not against it." Together they raced down the ridge, the storm swirling at their backs. The wind was blinding, tearing at their skin, carrying sand like knives. But the glowing marks on the girl's skin burned brighter, showing the hidden path through the chaos. Every step was a battle. But the human pushed forward, carrying her. When her legs gave out behind them, the villagers screamed as the storm struck, scattering their lines, throwing their torches into darkness. The elder's voice rose above the storm, furious and wild. "You cannot escape, child of exile. The desert itself will crush you." But the girl's marks flared like fire, and the storm seemed to twist around her, not crushing, but clearing. A narrow passage ahead, the human saw it and whispered, "She is not hunted. She is chosen." They broke through the wall of sand into a valley between the mountains. The air here was cooler, the stars above clearer, and the storm howled only behind them. The girl collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath, her body trembling. From exhaustion, the human knelt beside her, lifting the flask and pressing it to her lips. She drank slowly, the water giving her strength again. Her voice was weak, but filled with wonder. "The storm, it moved for me," she whispered. "It listened." The human nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "Yes," he said, "and that is why they fear you." From the mouth of the valley, faint lights still flickered. The villagers had not stopped. Though many were scattered, they still pressed forward, their hatred burning brighter than their fear. The elder's voice carried even through the distance. "You cannot run forever, child. The desert will be your grave." The girl shivered, but the human's voice cut through her fear. "Then let the desert see us reach the truth," he said. "Let it witness what they tried to hide." She looked up at him, her eyes wide, her heart pounding. "You believe I can face them?" she whispered. "I believe you can change them," he answered, his gaze firm. "But first you must know who you are." Together they pressed deeper into the valley, the glowing marks on her skin lighting the walls of stone around them. Strange carvings appeared on the rocks, old symbols buried by time. The girl reached out, her fingers tracing them, and the symbols flared to life, glowing like her own skin. Her breath caught in awe. These are the same as mine." The human's eyes hardened. "Then we are close." Behind them, the storm still roared, the villagers still chased, the elder's fury still burned. But ahead of them, the valley opened into darkness, and in that darkness lay something ancient. The girl's marks pulsed faster, brighter, guiding her forward like a heartbeat pulling her toward destiny. The human tightened his grip on her hand, his voice steady. "This is only the beginning of the chase," he said, "and it ends not with fear but with truth. The villagers might chase them, the storms might rise against them, the desert might test them, but the girl was no longer only a hunted child. She was a key, a beacon, a star burning against the void, and the chase had only made her light stronger." The valley narrowed into a canyon of jagged stone, its walls rising like teeth against the night sky. The girl's glowing marks pulsed brighter with each step, guiding the way deeper into the shadows. The human walked beside her, his eyes sharp, his hand always ready near the flask at his side. Behind them, the storm howled faintly, carrying the distant cries of the villagers still chasing. The path wound like a serpent, twisting between walls covered in strange carvings. The girl reached out to touch them, and as her fingers brushed, the symbols lit up, glowing with the same light as her skin. The air grew warmer, charged with unseen energy, as if the canyon itself had been sleeping for ages and now awoke at her touch. She gasped softly, her voice trembling. "It knows me." The human's gaze lingered on her, his voice steady. "No, it remembers you." Deeper they went, until the canyon opened suddenly into a wide basin surrounded by towering cliffs. At its center stood a structure half buried in sand, massive stone walls rising like a broken crown. The girl's eyes widened, her breath caught in wonder. "A temple," she whispered, her voice shaking with awe. "This is the forbidden place." The human studied the ruin, his expression unreadable. "This is older than your village," he said. "Older than the fear they chained you with." They stepped carefully toward the temple, the sand shifting under their feet. The girl's marks glowed so brightly now that the walls themselves answered, patterns flickering to life across the stone. The human ran his hand over one of the carvings, tracing lines that mirrored constellations in the sky. "These are star maps," he murmured. "This place was built to remember, not to forget." The entrance to the temple was a great arch cracked with age, half buried under collapsed stone. The girl hesitated at its threshold, fear and wonder battling inside her. "All my life," she whispered, "they told me this place was cursed. that no one who entered returned. The human's eyes met hers, steady and calm. "Curses are stories told by those who fear truth," he said. "Do you fear it?" Her lips trembled, but she shook her head. "Not anymore." Together they stepped inside. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of dust and forgotten time. Columns stretched high above them, broken yet still standing strong. The walls glimmered faintly with ancient markings, glowing brighter as the girl walked. Each step she took awakened more of the temple, until the darkness retreated into corners. They reached a wide chamber at the heart of the ruin. Its ceiling collapsed, letting starlight pour in. In the center stood a great circular platform etched with countless lines and symbols. The girl's marks pulsed in rhythm with the carvings, the light on her skin answering the stone. The human placed his hand on the platform, his voice low. "This is no temple of worship," he said. "This is a machine." The girl's heart pounded. A machine. For what? The human studied the glowing lines, his eyes narrowing. "For remembering." "And for guiding," he whispered. "This is a map of the stars, a navigation system." The girl's breath caught. "And I am the key." He nodded slowly. "Yes, your blood carries the code, your body carries the map." Before she could speak further, the ground trembled and a rumble echoed through the canyon outside. The human's hand went to his flask, his eyes darting to the entrance. "They found us," he said sharply. Torches flickered in the distance, shadows of villagers pouring into the basin, their chants rising. "Impure, impure," the elder's voice thundered above them all. "Child of exile, you cannot hide. The desert rejects you, and so do we." Girl's hands shook, her heart racing. "They will kill us," she whispered, but the human's voice cut firm through her fear. "No," he said, "they will see the truth." He guided her to the center of the platform, his eyes steady on hers. "Place your hands here," he told her, pointing to the glowing carvings. She hesitated, fear in her eyes, but then nodded, pressing her palms against the stone. At once the chamber roared with light. Symbols blazed. Across the walls the floor pulsed and the ceiling seemed to vanish into the sky. A projection of the stars filled the air, vast and infinite, showing not just their world, but countless others. Gasps echoed from the villagers as they stumbled into the chamber, their torches dim against the living map of the galaxy. The elder's face twisted in horror, his staff trembling in his hand. "Blasphemy!" he cried. "She awakens the curse." But the villagers were no longer shouting, only in fear. Some stood frozen in awe, their eyes wide as entire galaxies spun before them. The girl's body glowed brighter than ever, her marks pulsing in harmony with the great star map above. Her voice was soft, trembling, but filled with wonder. "I can see it," she whispered. "The path, the stars, the places we came from." The human's voice rose, clear and strong. "She is not impure," he declared. "She is memory. She is truth." The elder roared, striking his staff against the floor, sparks of energy flying. "You fool, human, this truth will destroy us." The human's gaze was like steel, his voice sharp. "No," he said. "It will free you." The chamber shook again, as if the temple itself responded to the argument. The star map shifted, focusing on one dark region of space where no stars shone. A warning symbol flashed across the walls, ancient and urgent. The girl gasped, her voice breaking. "There is something coming," she whispered. "Something from the void." The villagers trembled, their fear no longer of her, but of the vision. Before them, the elder tried to shout, but his voice cracked under the weight of the truth. The human placed a hand on the girl's shoulder, steady and firm. "Now they see," he said softly. "Now they cannot deny what you are." The temple glowed brighter, the star map spinning, the future opening before them. And though the villagers had come to kill, many now stood silent, their anger fading into uncertainty. The girl lifted her face to the sky, her voice filled with new strength. "I was never impure," she said. "I was always chosen." The truth had been buried, but the temple had remembered, and with the human at her side she had brought it back to life. The temple burned with light, the star map spinning across the chamber, filling every shadow with brilliance. The girl stood at its center, her glowing marks brighter than ever, her body like a living flame of starlight. The villagers froze, their torches useless against the galaxy alive before their eyes. Even their chants died, swallowed by the voice of the temple itself, whispering through the stones. The human stood beside her, steady as stone, his flask at his side, his eyes fixed on the vision above. The stars shifted, showing countless worlds, then focusing on one dark void that swallowed light itself. Symbols flashed around it, warnings carved by a people long gone. The girl trembled, her voice soft but filled with awe. "This is what they feared," she whispered, "not me, but what is coming." The elder staggered forward, his staff shaking, his face pale in the glow. "Lies," he cried, though his voice cracked with doubt. "This is a curse, nothing more." But the villagers no longer looked at him, their eyes fixed on the girl. Her glow was not a curse but a guide, a mirror of the stars, a voice of memory. The human spoke, his voice firm. "This is not impurity, this is a warning, a gift left for those strong enough to see it." He turned to the villagers, his gaze sharp as a blade. "You feared her, denied her water, cast her into the desert, but she is the reason you will survive." The girl's tears glistened in the light, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of release, of truth finally spoken. Her voice rose, clear and steady, echoing through the chamber. "I was never impure," she said. "I am the messenger, and the stars remember me." The villagers stirred, their whispers rising like wind. "She is chosen," one murmured. "She is the key," another said. Fear shifted into doubt, and doubt shifted into wonder. The elder roared, his staff blazing with unnatural light. "You will not listen to her," he shouted. "I am your leader. I am your law." He raised his staff high, lightning flashing from its tip, striking at the girl. But before it could reach her, the human stepped forward, his body shielding hers. The lightning struck him, his body shuddering with pain, but he did not fall. He stood firm, his flask swinging at his side, his voice a growl of defiance. "If mercy is doom," he said, "then let me be doomed forever." The elder stumbled back, fear flashing in his eyes. For no storm, no curse, no weapon had stopped the human. The girl's marks flared, brighter than lightning, brighter than fire. She raised her hands, and the temple itself answered. The walls blazed with light. The star map roared like a living sea of stars. The elder screamed as the light struck his, staff shattering it into dust. His voice was drowned out, his power broken, his lies silenced. The villagers fell to their knees, their eyes wide with awe and fear. The girl stepped forward, her voice steady. "You called me impure, but I am the path," she said. "The stars speak through me, and they speak of danger." The human, still standing though his body trembled, placed a hand on her shoulder. "And of hope," he added, his voice soft but strong. "Because danger can be faced if we stand together." The star map shifted again, showing their world, small and fragile under the shadow of the coming void. The symbols flashed, darkness spreading, worlds falling, but also paths of light, routes of survival, choices. The girl's eyes widened, her voice filled with wonder. "It shows a way," she whispered. "A path to resist the darkness, a path to unite." The villagers looked at her, their fear now mixed with something deeper, belief. One by one, they lowered their heads, their voices trembling. "Forgive us," one whispered. "Forgive our blindness," another said. The elder, broken and powerless, was dragged away by the storm of whispers, his name already forgotten. The girl turned to the human, her eyes shining. "All my life they gave me nothing but rejection," she said softly. "But you gave me water." He looked at her, his lips curving into a faint smile. "Because humanity begins with sharing," he said. "And so does the future." He lifted his flask high, the last drops of water glinting in the temple's light. Then he handed it, not just to her, but toward the villagers who had once turned their backs. "Drink," he said, his voice echoing. Not in fear, but in hope, for tomorrow begins here. The villagers hesitated. Then slowly, one by one, they reached forward. Not in hatred, not in fear, but in unity. The flask passed from hand to hand, and each sip became more than water. It became a promise, a bond, a choice. The girl's marks dimmed softly, no longer burning but glowing like gentle stars. She smiled through her tears, her voice calm and strong. The desert denied me, but the stars never did, she said, and now neither will you. The temple quieted, the light fading slowly, but the star map remained etched in their hearts. The villagers rose, their eyes no longer blind, their voices no longer cruel. They would face the darkness together because of a child once called impure, because of a human who chose mercy over fear. And as the twin suns rose again beyond the mountains, their light spilling into the valley, the girl lifted her face to the sky, her marks glowing softly. No longer a curse, no longer exile, no longer alone. She was the chosen, the messenger of the stars, and the future had begun with a flask of water shared in the desert of silence.